Well, it wasn't supposed to be a close game, but it ended up being one. England with a slowdown in the last few overs, almost matching that of Sri Lanka's, and it kept Dasun Shanaka's side interested in the game. It kept Australia interested in the tournament for that much longer. Eventually, Ben Stokes hung around long enough, and Chris Woakes at the other end managed to get the job done. Job done for England. They go into the semi-finals. Australia go out. Sri Lanka bow out, and we look back at what turned out to be quite a tight game in this final Super 12 encounter of Group 1. This is Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout. We'll hear from Farveez Maharoof shortly. Tom Moody and Uthappa in studio with me, and we were expecting to be here about 30 minutes before time with the way they started, Tom. 74 and 7. What happened there? Why did it suddenly look like that whole game was running at 1x speed less?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's pressure. It's runs on the board, that type of pressure. I think also the surface did slow down after the new ball, and the way that particularly Hales attacked the new ball, I thought was a real plus for England. He's been a great inclusion into their squad, only by coincidence, because he's only there because Johnny Bairstow had the incident on the golf course and found himself on the operating table, but. Yeah, look, it's that pressure of having to chase down a total. The Sri Lankans had all the spin resources. They used them all. They probably wish they had more at their disposals. Look, England should have won that a lot easier. They'll probably look back on that and think that it was probably a soft performance from them in the middle of their innings.
Yeah, while we might look at that and think from a Sri Lankan point of view or from a neutral point of view or an Aussie point of view, what if Sri Lanka had managed 15-20 more? Would have been quite the game. But do we look back at the end of the Sri Lanka innings perhaps more sympathetically now? It did look like hitting boundaries got a lot harder as the innings got deeper, Robin?
Absolutely. It was a story of two halves in both the innings. In the first 10 favour the batters, the second 10 the bowlers. And I think both teams did well with once that ball got old, and clearly that first 10 overs was really good to bat when the ball was new and hard, and you could go after the bowlers with that the power play rule. The second half not so much, and then clearly the English batters looked like they were into the shot before the ball came through, and especially at Moeen Ali's dismissal, you can see how early on the ball he was and just couldn't get enough power. It felt like he could easily hit that over extra cover, but clearly I think the wicket got slower in the second half.
All right, tense as it was for us, perhaps. Farveez, how tense was it for you? I'm sure there's that moment, that element of regret. What if they had got 155, 160? Could have been a different result.
Absolutely, 160 would have been definitely a good score, especially with the way the batters struggled in the middle overs. As I mentioned, best time to bat with the new ball. Alex said did the right thing, going after Sri Lanka in the power play, scored 70-odd runs. But ever since then, Sri Lanka came back well. They used all the quota of spin bowling. Dhananjaya, Mahesh and Wanindu Hassananga. The 12 overs only costed 69 runs and picked up 4 wickets. Just goes to show, they would have, Dasun Shanaka would have hoped if he had one more good spin option, put more pressure on the Englishman.
Would you say that's a responsible, experienced Ben Stokes innings? We spoke so much about him in our pre-show, but I guess in that situation, if you give anyone a choice, forget everything else, forget numbers, it's we want Ben Stokes batting there.
Yeah, I think Dawood Malan would have done the same sort of innings because he's that type of player. But in a way, it's done Ben Stokes a favour because it's given him the opportunity to show his experience. He's a big match player, isn't he? Let's face it. He didn't take any unnecessary risk. He just knew he needed to be there at the end. There's a few people around him panicked. I thought Livingston's shot was an absolute shocker.
Right.
Under those circumstances, he's a far better player than that. First ball of Kamara's come back over, trying to hit him out of the ground. Sometimes I just get the feeling sometimes he's thinking more about how far he can hit a six against sort of looking at the match situation. He just needed to play an innings that comprised of just knocking the ball around, and if the ball was in the slot, by all means try to find a boundary. But to me, he gets a little bit caught up in the fast lane at times, and that to me was a significant wicket. Certainly straight after the Harry Brook dismissal, it just put unnecessary pressure on England, knowing they were a batter light.
that's the way he plays argument does not work for someone like Livingston in that situation, Tom?
Not at all. Well, he's in the Test squad, isn't he, for England? So
Well, that's the way they play Test cricket these days.
yeah, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. Baseball.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I don't wear that excuse.
fair
If the conditions were different, if the circumstances were different, yeah, and you know that's what the team required and the situation required, fine. But the
If
surface,
they were batting first.
yeah,
that
the
was-
surface wasn't a surface that you could go and just from ball one just tee off, because it was slowing up and it was hard to play those big shots.
Slightly different theme in these few games at Sydney on what's obviously a used surface to what we saw initially. We bring up numbers about the openers are struggling and the top order struggling. All of a sudden, openers are getting the odd scorer, getting some runs. And the middle order, when the wicket's slowing down, finding it a bit harder. Is that likely to be seen going
No,
forward?
I don't think so. I think it was just a matter of this wicket being used for the third time for the third match. I think that's why it slowed down considerably. It did look very tired, this wicket.
Yeah.
I think even the conditions in Australia are slowly going back to status quo.
Yes.
As far as the summer is concerned. You're seeing a lot more games, very few games affected by rain in that sense. So I feel like, I think all the batters will have a good time now. And they've also spent enough time in Australia to understand what will work for them, what won't work for them. So all the teams in that top four will be excited to go.
This is not what we can expect in the semi-final at the SCG, this surface.
No, it'd be a new surface for the semi-final. For the semi-final, I would have thought. I think we'll see a high-scoring semi-final, and we'll also see that at the MCG come the final.
All right, well, let's hope we get a full game at the MCG. It's developed a bad reputation with as many as 2 washouts already, but we'll get to see that tomorrow. All right, Sri Lanka bow out of this tournament, and Farveez, from the highs of the Asia Cup win, it doesn't seem like such a long time back that you and me were discussing what a triumphant win it was, what a wonderful journey it was. You had even picked Sri Lanka to make the semi-finals. I wonder how you look back at their World Cup campaign. Of course, losing to Namibia, having to make it through the Super 12s the hard way, and at the end of it all, not much to show other than the win against Ireland and Afghanistan.
Yeah, quite a disappointment from a Sri Lankan perspective, because after winning the Asia Cup, yes, I did count Sri Lanka as one of the semi-finalists, because the form they came out of Asia Cup and reputation some of the players did develop. But overall, I thought it's quite a disappointment looking at the performances. I mean, in world events, you generally remember the start and the end. But Sri Lanka lost the start, lost the end as well. So it just goes to show they started pretty poorly, ending it poorly, and so many players are getting injured. So lots of questions to be asked. I mean, after this tournament, I'm sure once the selectors do have a meeting, will have a post-mortem and take it forward, because you come the 2024 World Cup. Yes, Sri Lanka has got the automatic qualification, but lots of thoughts should be coming in. More players will be looked at as well. So I reckon for Sri Lanka, it's a disappointment. From a Sri Lankan fan, it's a disappointment having so much hopes. In the end, I thought the more deserving 2 teams in the group, which is New Zealand and England, correctly going through.
Yes, Robin.
If I'm a Sri Lankan supporter, I wouldn't overthink this. One was this campaign is marred with injuries.
Yes.
Secondly, they're coming from a massive high after the Asia Cup victory. So, but you have to remember that was played in the subcontinent.
Of course.
So, in a very short space of time, they've come to Australia, very different conditions, and if you just in hindsight you go back and look at that first game they played that they lost, I think it was to Namibia.
Yeah.
If you look at that game, you can see they played the same kind of cricket that they played at the Asia Cup, the same pattern. But as the tournament has worn on, we've understood that there's a certain way to approach this tournament at this time with these conditions in Australia, and they didn't have that information. So I think overthinking it is also not necessarily the best thing to do for the Sri Lankans. To accept that, okay, we didn't assess the conditions well enough, this is a good enough bunch of boys, we'll back these guys, because they are high quality players. And even the reserve players who've come in to fill the original 15, fill in for the original 15, have done fairly well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we obviously must extend some sympathy to Sri Lanka for the injuries. It was bizarre that they were putting 11 together, Tom, with how quickly their bowlers were falling. Essentially, it was the bowlers. There was Madhu Shankar, there was Chamira, Binura Fernando through the tournament. The bowlers still seem to keep them alive. From a batting front, some big boys haven't fired. Bhanuka Rajapaksa, Shanaka with bat. That's a disappointment on how Sri Lanka have batted this tournament.
It's a massive disappointment. You know, particularly the two you mentioned, that they have got the experience. You know, one's holding the captaincy badge, and you know, particularly Dasun Shanaka's not even bowling, or he's hardly bowling. So really, he's playing primarily as a batsman, and he hasn't delivered. Look, that's a real concern. Their batting and how they go about their batting, how they structure their batting order. There's a few positives there. There's no question. But to me, having spent time in Sri Lanka recently, the real concern for me is the repetition of injuries. It is remarkable what's happening with the injuries with a lot of their players, particularly their fast bowlers, but a lot of their players. So, you know, to me, that's where the real sort of deep diving needs to go into. So really
this
looking at.
This isn't just a matter of bad ill luck or ill fortune. It's something to do with the system there.
I think if you look back over the last few years, it's been a pretty consistent pattern with regards to injuries, and maybe Mahar can give us a little bit more insight, given that he's on the ground there. But that to me is a real issue, and seems to be that real resistance to shift as a cricketing nation to where the modern game is with regards to fitness and fitness standards.
Sure.
And you look at the South African team, you look at the English team, you look at the Indian team, you look at the New Zealand team, you look at these teams that are operating at the high end consistently. That there is one consistent pattern. You always see Trent Boult and Tim Southee opening the bowling for New Zealand every major tournament. You always see Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins always available, and so on and so forth. I know Bumrah's been out injured.
Workload comes into that.
But to me, you can't ignore that.
So I think these kind of injuries happen for one or two reasons. One is if there's a lack of training that's happening, and then the volume of what you're doing on the field is your body is not prepared enough for that, or if you're training the wrong stuff. And then if there's a deep dive that needs to be done, then I think it should be on those fronts. Like, are we doing the wrong stuff? If you're actually doing stuff, or are we not doing enough as a group, and we don't have a good enough culture there?
All right, let's put that to Farveez. Farveez, you've been listening to this conversation quite intently from your perspective, seeing everything and knowing everything in Sri Lanka. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely not the wrong stuff being trained, because I think everything is in order. There's a good fitness trainer in the Sri Lankan system. But main concern for me when it comes to adapting the conditions. Now, this team did go to Australia 2 weeks prior, so they had a good 10 days of camp in Melbourne, and they played only one practice game against Zimbabwe. Second got washed out, and before the first game, which happened in Geelong against Namibia, Sri Lanka were well prepared. They had 2 weeks there. They had enough time to go, get all together and to be 100% there. So the way they started that tournament, there were a lot of panicness, lots of issues when it comes to the fielding. So that's the biggest disappointment for me right throughout this tournament, the fielding part, especially the game against New Zealand. I mean, gone are the days, gone are the years. I'm sure Tom will agree with me. The Sri Lankan teams did, put a lot of pride in their fielding. Yes, batting, bowling can fail. I mean, there's no rocket science about it. You can have an off day, but in the field, sometimes the attitude isn't right. And when it comes to the fitness part, yes, Sri Lanka, where it has to be in international cricket, is lacking a bit low. That got to be mentioned, because there are a couple of years before, or maybe 1.5 years before, there's lots of headlines, wrong reasons in the headlines when it comes to fitness. So overall, I think selectors have taken a hard path, and Tom was part of it. He knows what exactly went through there. It's important to stick to that routine and get the maximum out of it. I mean, injuries do happen, but when you're getting injured in a world event like this, there's no consistency. There are about 6 players who have missed out. So I think overall, lots of thinking to be done, and deep, as Tom said, it's time to dig deep and find out what exactly is going wrong, and try and treat it as soon as possible, because in another few days' time, Afghanistan is coming down. 3 1-days. It's all Super League 1-day tournament as well. So it's important that Sri Lanka get the 11 best players available to play that 3 1-days against a dangerous Afghanistan team.
All right, food for thought if you're a Sri Lankan fan, and we will see how Sri Lanka respond to what was otherwise a disappointing campaign, notwithstanding, of course, sympathies that they had to deal with so many injuries. But as our panel have discussed, perhaps that's something they need to look into as well. Tom Moody makes an excellent point about the availability of fast bowlers, and of course Mitchell Starc is always available, unless you drop him. Couldn't help myself. Anyway, sorry. Let's move on.
That was yesterday's news.
Yes, of course it was. We even got 120 volts today, not 119.
Yeah, that's
Like yesterday. That's awesome.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's remarkable, isn't it?
How can that happen in 2022 with all the
Yeah, it's
technology?
incredible.
We'll wait to see if that happens again. Let me get a quick word in on England, though. The curtains come down on this group. New Zealand and England go through. Australia go out. So that little jinx or voodoo that haunts the T20 World Cup hosts of never having won it after hosting it will go on after this edition. And you've got England to just pip the Aussies on net run rate. New Zealand finished top. They'd be looking back at that opening day game, both teams, New Zealand and Australia, on opposite ends of how that has shaped out with this group, which has been marred by weather as well. Farveez says it's the best two teams in the group that have qualified. Tom, would you concur?
Yeah, look, I think so. Australia have been poor. I certainly thought they would be, playing semi-finals, but this England side's a good side, even though they, were shaky today.
Yeah.
They should have really been more dominant today in the way they won that match against Sri Lanka. But yeah, New Zealand, have been pretty polished, haven't they? So, and to me, they look like they're getting better and better. So, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, that's you call them shaky England. That's like, I think 4 shaky points they've got. Afghanistan, they perhaps lost a few more wickets than they would have liked. Today, they've certainly lost a few more wickets they would have liked. They lost to Ireland. Is this England team not necessarily firing on all cylinders? Is it still a dangerous team, do you think? Or has it just been, pretty below par performance in them in the Super 12s?
All of the above.
Yeah? Okay.
I think they just haven't played the potential, and they'd want to step up come the knockouts. So I think they pull their socks up and come well prepared for whoever they're going to be facing.
Do you sense that this is perhaps a better way to go into the semi-finals? It makes you more dangerous?
Sometimes
Right.
you feel like you have nothing to lose.
Okay, looks likely to be a semi-final between India and England if India get the job done against Zimbabwe, and South Africa and New Zealand if South Africa do the honours against the Netherlands. Right, that's pretty much it. Tom Moody, would you like to give Farveez Maharoof a heartwarming send-off, maybe a flying kiss, something else? You go back a long way.
We do go back a long way. Farewell, my friend.
He's got a nice heart.
Look forward to seeing you sometime soon.
Excellent. All right, Farveez, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, coach. Likewise, always have a good banter, good laugh with Tom. Robbie, me and Robbie go back more than 22 years of friendship and rivalry. So
Under
we will stick
17
to it
days.
and Raunak.
Wow.
Under 17
The blue
days,
shirt almost
so-
worked, my friend.
No. This and the yellow t-shirt are going out of the window.
We'll send you a new stock,
I need more.
Farveez.
I need
We're
more.
sending you a
New
new
colours.
stock. We're sending you a new stock. Yeah.
Ask them for Sri Lankan
Yellow and
colours
blue
with
gone.
ESP and cricket info. Combine the two and see what magic you can work.
They obviously don't do my
Raunak-
size.
This country doesn't do your size.
Yeah, maybe the subcontinent doesn't
Yeah.
do your size.
Just an extra X, that's all it is.
All right, good fun. Thank you very much, Farveez Maharoof.
Cheers,
Plenty
guys.
more from you as coverage goes forward with Sri Lankan cricket. And thank you to Tom Moody and Robin Uthappa. Let's send them off. They're going to have their alarms going off at 5 a.m. our time just to watch the South Africa-Netherlands game. We will be with you for Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 timeout at the end of that game, building up to Pakistan v Bangladesh. So 9 a.m. if you're in our part of the world, join us for a build-up, by which time we're expecting South Africa to have completed their route to the semi-final. There's India, Zimbabwe to look forward to as well. Before I leave you, make sure you check out the Cricket Infoverse with Grand Vitara. It's the fans' newest destination to make their digital avatar, interact with other fans, and also have a look at the advanced Grand Vitara with Maruti Suzuki. So head over to the Cricket Infoverse tab on your ESPN Cricket Info homepage. That's all from us. Join us tomorrow morning for what will be the last day of Super 12 coverage from this World Cup. Bye-bye.